Welcome to episode 128 of OTD, your daily dose of soccer history by a 17 Laws guy. It's March 8, 1953. Lima, Estadio Nacional, 45,000 people. Peru versus Paraguay in the South American Championship, what we now call the Copa America. And on paper, it finishes 2-2. But this match doesn't end when the whistle goes. It keeps going in paperwork, in outrage, and in a ruling that nearly flips the tournament on its head, because Paraguay make 4 substitutions when only 3 are allowed, and in the chaos, a Paraguayan player kicks the referee. If the match stands as played, Paraguay on a straight road to the first continental title. But it doesn't stand. The points are awarded to Peru. Paraguay lose the point they thought they'd earned. And suddenly, instead of a clean round-robin champion, the tournament is forced into a playoff, and Paraguay have to beat Brazil again to lift their first South American crown. This is the story of the match that almost derailed Paraguay's first Copa. So how did we get here? Well, we start with the tournament itself. This isn't a modern invention. This championship begins in 1916, older than the World Cup, and it grows into South America's annual brutal laboratory. Identity, rivalry, and football politics compressed into one round-robin. The format is simple and merciless. Everyone plays everyone. 2 points for a win, 1 for a draw. And if the top teams finish level on points, you don't count goal difference and go home. You play again. A playoff. A final before finals were a thing. Now put Paraguay into that ecosystem. Paraguayan football arrives the way football so often does in the early 20th century. Teachers, students, clubs forming before the state fully understands the sport. The league is founded in 1906, joining CONMEBOL in 1921 and FIFA in 1925. And Paraguay quickly becomes a regular in the South American Championship circuit. For decades, Paraguay are competitive, dangerous, sometimes brilliant, but not yet champions. They have moments, podium finishes, giant results, and a national team identity built on organization, grit, and the ability to make better teams hate playing them. By 1953, they're ready for the leap. And here's the first irony. Paraguay was supposed to host this tournament, but they didn't have a suitable stadium for the competition's demands, so the championship moves to Peru, to Lima, and to the Estadio Nacional. So Paraguay arrive in Peru with a strange mixture of disadvantage and freedom. They're not at home, but they're also not carrying the weight of a host nation trying to perform. They're there to win. And they are led by a serious football man, Manuel Fleitas Solich, coach, organizer, and one of the key architects of Paraguay's first great continental peak. The squad has names that matter in this story: Angel Berni, Ruben Fernandez, Atilio Lopez, and a team that is, above all, hard to break. Now the tournament begins. Paraguay start well, 3-0 against Chile, and then a goalless draw with Ecuador. Peru are the hosts, but they're not cruising. They lose the opening match to Bolivia, then draw Chile, and they're desperate for points. And that takes us to the match played on this day, March 8th, Peru versus Paraguay, third match day. This is where the tournament's calm round-robin logic turns into something far messier. Peru, hosts and under pressure, start like a team playing its last chance match, aggressive, urgent, pushing the tempo. But the game quickly stops being clean and becomes a fight. Repeated fouls, arguments, and a referee, the Englishman Richard Maddison, struggling to keep hold of the temperature. Paraguay land the first punch. Ruben Fernandez puts him in front before the interval, and the stress level spikes further when Paraguay's goalkeeper Adolfo Riquelme goes down injured and has to be replaced. An early change that will matter later, long after anyone remembers the save that forced it. After the break, Peru flipped the score in a blur. Oscar Gomez Sanchez equalizes, and then Alberto Terry makes it 2-1. And now the stadium believes again, because the hosts can see the points, can see the table, and can see the championship still alive. But then comes the flashpoint. With Peru leaving 2-1, a new decision goes against Paraguay. A goal for Ruben Fernandez is ruled out, and the match tips from tense into combustible. The anger spills over the line. Milner Ayala runs across the pitch and strikes the referee. Maddison blows the whistle and signals the end. The players walk off. Peru celebrated as if it's over, so much so that in the surreal minutes that follow, the teams are already back inside, already cooling down. And then the match restarts. A delegate orders both sides back out to complete the remaining minutes. And in that absurd, half-presumed ending, Paraguay forced the equalizer. Angel Berni scores, and the scoreboard settles on 2-2, but nothing about this draw feels settled, because by the time the dust clears, the match has already become a legal case. Paraguay has made 4 substitutions in a competition where only 3 were permitted. They did 3 outfield changes plus the goalkeeper replacement, a detail that will soon fuel Peru's protest and turn a 2-2 on the pitch into a loss on paper. Within about a week, the organizers act. Paraguay is stripped of the point they earned on the pitch. The match is awarded to Peru, meaning Peru get 2 points, Paraguay gets 0, even as the 2-2 remains the match-remembered scoreline. And that is the hinge, because now the tournament mathematics changes completely. Paraguay keep playing like champions. They draw Uruguay 2-2. They beat Bolivia 2-1. They even beat Brazil 2-1, a statement win that should have crowned them in a clean round robin. But because of March 8th, Paraguay don't finish alone at the top. Brazil and Paraguay at level on points. So the championship demands its old school solution: playoff, 1 match. Winner takes the continent. April 1st, 1953, Paraguay versus Brazil. This is where the story becomes almost cinematic, because Paraguay had already beaten Brazil in the round robin. They have to do it again under maximum pressure, with the title sitting in the middle of the pitch like a physical object. And Paraguay come out like a team that refuses to let bureaucracy steal their peak. They go 3-0 up, Atilio Lopez in the 14th minute, Manuel Gavilan in the 17th, and Ruben Fernandez in the 41st. Brazil fight back. Baltazar scores twice, and suddenly it's 3-2, and the final minutes feel like a cliff's edge. But Paraguay hold on, and at the whistle, Paraguay finally have what they'd never had before: a South American championship, their first Copa. But what did March 8, 1953 actually mean? Well, first it meant that Paraguay's greatest triumph needed 2 wins over Brazil, not 1. Without the protest, Paraguay likely finished as round-robin champions. With the protest, they're forced into an extra match, and they prove, twice, that they are worthy. That's not just resilience. That is championship character forged in administrative fire. Second, it means that governance, not just football, decided the shape of history. This is an early reminder that tournaments don't run on emotion. They run on rules. And when the rules are blurry, when the administration is weak, football becomes vulnerable to protests and politics. The 4th substitution is not just a scandal. It's a snapshot of a sport still maturing in its control systems. And third, it meant peak and fade for Paraguay, because this 1953 title is a summit, but it isn't the start of a permanent era. In 1954 World Cup qualifiers, Paraguay falls short and Brazil go through. In the next South American Championship cycle, Paraguay can't defend the crown the way dynasties do. And for years afterward, they slide back into the CONMEBOL hierarchy with flashes, with spikes and with moments, but not with sustained dominance. Until 1979, when Paraguay win the Copa again. And then, much later, another short golden stretch arrives: the 2010 World Cup quarterfinal and the 2011 Copa America final. Peaks, not permanence, which is why 1953 still matters so much. It's the first time Paraguay touched the top of South America, and they touch it in the most Paraguayan way possible, not by having the biggest stars, but by surviving chaos, absorbing injustice, and beating Brazil when it matters most. So before we go, 3 things to take away from March 8, 1953. First, the match doesn't end at full time if the rules are in dispute. Peru versus Paraguay is remembered at 2-2, but it is decided by a protest. And second, small administrative errors create massive sporting consequences. 1 extra substitution forces a playoff that changes the tournament's entire ending. And third, champions aren't only the best team, they're the team that survives the environment. Paraguay didn't just win the football, they won the chaos around it. On this day in 1953, Peru and Paraguay drew 2-2 in Lima, but a 4th substitution, a kicked referee, and a protest turned a draw into a defeat on paper and forced Paraguay to win their first Copa the hard way by beating Brazil twice and refusing to let the bureaucracy write their ending. That's all for episode 128 of OTD, your daily dose of soccer history by 17 Lost Guy. If you enjoyed this episode, please follow the show, leave a rating, and share it with a fellow football historian. Tomorrow, we go to March 9, 1907, the last Sheriff of London Charity Shield, and the split between amateur and professional football that shaped English football's class system for decades. See you tomorrow.